trance. DJ turn me up, ladies this your jam. I'ma sip Moscato and you gon' lose them pants. And I'ma throw this money while you do it with no hands. Girl, drop it to the floor. I love the way your booty go.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Fresh Prince of Ayodha. Today we have with us the Prince of Ayodha himself, Rama. We also have with us his lovely bride, Sita. And let's not forget to mention the 10-headed beauty we have, Ravana.
But that's not all, folks. We also have his father, Dazaratha, and his stepmother, Kaikai.
That's right, Jeff. Now, in today's episode, we'll be exploring the connections and discords between the cultural and moralistic values in the Ramayana as well as in modern American society. But before we dive into that today, here's a word from our sponsor.
Do you have a loved one close to death and you don't feel prepared? Well, look no further. Come on down to Penelope's Burial Shroud Company, the only shroud company around that can give you a burial shroud today to make sure your loved one does not go into the ground without having some type of symbol or personal effect to show their honor and dignity throughout their life. Plus, for a limited time only, if you come in and buy one today, you also get a free one for yourself. This deal is a limited time offer that you won't want to pass up. So come on down to Penelope's Burial Shroud Company and pick yours up today. Burial shrouds may take up to a decade or two to be made. We are not liable for the duration of time it takes to make the shroud. If you're lucky, you possibly will get one made before your life expires.
Well, I will say, those shrouds do sound great. Alright, let's dive right into our episode. To start off today, we'll be talking to Rama and Sita to see just exactly what happened in their relationship and who's really in the wrong here.
Alright, so for you guys, my first question today is, some people describe your relationship as noxious and unhealthy. So how do each of you view this relationship?
I wouldn't specifically call our relationship noxious. I can completely see how it could be considered unhealthy, but you gotta think. I'm a prince, I'm a son, and I'm a husband. My duty to my people, my duty to my father, my duty to my wife, I mean, you add everything up, it just becomes a lot of hardships. I understand that people want me to be this perfect human being and be someone they can look up to, and I do try my best to be that person, but all I can do is try my best. I can't be this perfect person that everyone wants me to be. I gotta think about myself sometimes, but at the end of the day, I'm just out here to do what I do best and get things done the best way I can and make people as happy as I can. You win some and you lose some.
That is definitely something that we should think about. Societal pressures really influence the actions of people in relationships, but that kind of differs from modern America. Modern American society has different expectations than Indian societies. So now I really want to dive into the other side of this. Sita, how do you feel about this entire situation?
I would classify a relationship as poisonous, quite frankly, because of the back and forth structure that goes on between us. You continuously feel like you need me to prove myself to you to ease your own insecurities, and this is so harmful because knowing that your partner doesn't believe or support you is obviously very damaging in a relationship. Our culture puts a huge emphasis on mutual respect and communication to create a successful marriage, and I just don't see that between us. You're supposed to support me or come to me if you feel that there's a problem. Instead, you undermine my worth and you don't trust me. You put me through trials to prove my purity and continuously doubt me.
So, Sita, that was really interesting to hear about. So, what I'm getting from you is that there are societal pressures that can cause insecurities and even a toxic type of environment, both personally and for the relationship. Um, the unhealthy relationships can be hard to get out of. And seeing as how you didn't leave Rama for all of these things, it's the person in the relationship views the relationship as better than other people see it. You know, like I would see this completely different than you would see it. And so that might be tied to how you didn't leave Rama. All right, so we've heard both of you guys' perspectives on this relationship. Now, Sita, I want to hear from you more. Do you feel that Rama was justified in his actions towards you, or no?
I feel that it is understandable that there were situations that caused Rama to act out. I mean, there has to be immense pressures that come from being a leader and having your actions so closely observed by your own people that you're leading. However, I think that some instances in a relationship were just simply inexcusable. I mean, for instance, Rama continuously doubted me and put me down when there's supposed to be a balance of support and respect in our relationship. Secondly, Rama exiled me when our family was in a time of need, when our sons were close to being born and we were supposed to be building up our family and not tearing it apart. This type of destruction and this type of destruction to the respect of the family dynamic is inexcusable and completely damaging. So while I can understand some of the pressures and reasoning for what Rama did, I will never be able to forget or repair all of the damage that has been done to our marriage and our family. We were supposed to support each other and create a space for our family to grow and learn. However, we created a marriage that was toxic and has tons of doubt and distrust. We were also supposed to have an equal contribution of decisions and communication between our relationship, and Rama continuously made decisions without me, putting me through purity trials and exiling me from our home and further damaging our trust and respect for each other. So while you were damaging to us, Rama, I wouldn't leave our marriage or our family for the sake of upholding our family name and our reputation, but the damage you have done is just can't be repaired.
Sita, you obviously have some very, very strong feelings about this and very strong opinions, but I want to look at the other side of all this. Rama, do you feel that Sita in any way contributed to your unhealthy relationship?
Throughout the 14 years of my exile, Sita has stood by my side. But it really wasn't until that golden deer came along. Like, that was the first time we had a really big problem. Out of all the things she ever asked me for, the first big one was this golden deer, which, out of nowhere, looking very unnatural and very suspicious because we were just attacked by Ravana's men, she still wanted it. Even after being captured and having a chance to be saved by Hanuman, she chose to stay. Like, almost like she was asking to be, like, captured in the first place, and now she just wants to stay and see what I would do. Anyone at that point could have saved her, but she decided to stay in Ravana's palace. After being saved and going through that purity test, she somehow became pregnant. And that's the one thing that doesn't make sense to me. How could you become pregnant shortly after being saved and shortly after surviving a fire, showing that you're pure and that you are loyal? It just doesn't add up to me.
So, what I'm going to take away from this um, talk that we've had so far is that almost every relationship has its weaknesses and weak points where each partner holds on to their own insecurities. We learned from you, Rama, as well as you, Sita, that ignoring those underlying problems will never do either side any good and will ultimately result in an unhealthy environment and an overall an unhealthy relationship. So I think that addressing those underlying problems and things that we don't necessarily want to address is something that we really need to work hard on and make sure that we do, because otherwise we can feel trapped in our own relationships and that's never healthy for either party. So, what do you think, Steph?
If we're going to be completely honest and applying it to today, it would not be socially acceptable for Rama to treat Sita the way he did purely based on his own insecurities. I mean, look at this. The sons of Rama would not still idolize him in the way that they did even after he banished their mother. That's insane. They would have more resentment towards their father than anything.
And now, time for a short break. We will be back soon.
Are you looking for a way to prove your strength? To impress the ladies and win them over? Then look no further and order the Bow of Confirmation now, with testimonies and successful marriages from both the powerful Odysseus and the great Rama. Only 4,000 Indian rupees. Disclaimer: do not use without supervision. Side effects may include toxic relationships, unhealthy marriages, huge ego, and misogyny.
Alrighty, guys. So, something that I want to kind of explore and talk about a little bit more are the relationships you all have with each other. I think the dynamic of your guys' family is so interesting, and I know Jeff and I have agreed that the way it's depicted is just so it's fun to watch. And so I think something that is the most interesting is how you all interact with the parental figures, like how Rama, you interact with Desratha and Kaikei, and how Desratha and Kaikei, you guys interact with each other. So let's just kind of break this down and talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Raj. Looking from it at a perspective that's in modern times, the way that you act with your parents is a lot different than we see in our societies in the United States. So, Desratha, I just want to ask you, your loyalties seem to have shifted between your wife and your sons. Where do your loyalties truly lie?
So, obviously, being a husband, I have a duty to my wife. However, I also have a duty to my son, Rama, being his father, you know. And, oh my, I love my child. I love my son more than any other being in this world. And anybody who knows me knows that. So, I, much like the entire kingdom, the entire everybody I rule over, we all unanimously, wow, hard word to say, unanimously decided that Rama should have been. We all thought it, you know. However, there's always got to be a however or a but. The family honor and image is more important when it comes to my culture and my religion. So I am the head of my household, and therefore I need to be seen by my community and my people and respected as such. So I made a promise to my wife that she could cash in a favor at any point in time, which looking back was a stupid idea because you know how it ended. It ended with my favorite son being exiled. So obviously I would take that back in a heartbeat, but you can't because honor, yes, that's what they told me. Marry her, it would be fun. They told me. Anyway, so she took advantage of the situation. There's no doubt in my mind that she took advantage of the situation because she could not bear the thought of Rama being king over our firstborn. So here's the thing. In this situation, my loyalties are to my. Don't get me wrong, I love both my son and my wife beyond words. I love them both. But the image and example seen by the people in my kingdom and by the society is truly what matters. So overall, the loyalties have to be to my name and to my honor, because without that, what do I have? Nothing.
So, really, what I'm hearing, you know what? I'm just gonna call you Big D. What I'm hearing is that Big D is really just trying to demonstrate the importance of upholding the image of a family name in the Indian culture. Now, that's a big contrast to what we're seeing and feeling in the United States. This is drastically different from this modern America society that we're all used to because the loyalties tend to lie within the actual family and not just the upholdingness of the family name itself.
So I'm sensing that the tensions in this room are getting a little high. So I want to hear from Rama and Kaikai about everything that was just said. So, do you guys feel that Desratha owes more to either one of you than he does to the other, or how are we feeling about this?
I don't feel that my father owes me anything more than he does to my stepmother Kaikei. We both have done a great deal for him, and it ultimately is his decision what will come of his kingdom. His choice to put me into 14 years of exile has just given me a chance to learn more, mature, and just come to a point where I'm not a kid being thrown the kingdom, taking over something at such a young age. Being out in the forest, I had my trials and my tribulations that have made me grow as a man and as a prince, and have given me more wisdom before rising and inheriting such a big role in our society.
I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, Dazaratha just owed me for our dealings long ago when he was ill. I mean, even with this, my son, Bharata, deserved the crown before Rama should have even been considered, for he is the eldest and most deserving of the position. Rama is great, and I love him like my own, but my favor was the only way to ensure that my son, my sweet old son, Bharata, was rightfully crowned.
I feel like something important to notice from this conversation is much like in Indian culture, sons in modern American culture also seek the approval of their parents and try to live up to the expectations that are given from our parents. So in modern America, there's more inequality and conversation on decisions made by parents. There's more of a conversation dynamic. Unlike in Indian culture, where the father figure kind of makes all the decisions for everyone else and he is like the higher head of the household.
Honestly, yeah, those are some very, very good points that we always have to consider. So, I just want to kind of get into the nitty gritty with all this. Rama, Big D, how do you two exactly feel about Kaikeyi's influence on each of you and, honestly, her sons and each of your sons?
I honestly feel like she's brought a negative influence, making the decision over a child that is not hers. As it goes in all families, my father looks after and protects Kaikai. After his death, she will have to look towards me and my brothers, including her son, to protect her in old age. I would not say that she has really influenced me, more that her influence has made me a stronger man, a stronger person, and has just given me a lot more time to understand and just prepare to be able to take over the throne of Ayodhya.
So I'm kind of gonna go off a little bit of what Robin was talking about, you know. So my wife was a beautiful and wise woman. I mean, is. Sitting right next to me. She still is. She still is. She was definitely able to take Rama in and as her own while he was growing up and kind of guide him through some parts of life. Um, she definitely helped him grow stronger and helped him learn how to be a more patient man. But however, here's my however. With that being said, her influence on me is what caused Rama to be exiled in the first place. She had me wrapped around her pretty dainty little fingers and caught me in a trap of honesty and loyalty to my own word. Her actions were done to benefit herself and no one else, because she needed her son to be king so that he could take care of her as she gets older after I passed away, you know. Her actions were really just to benefit herself. So it was definitely a negative impact and a negative effect on all of our lives. Although she did take Rama in as her own son at some points, her main focus was to secure her own safety later on in life. You know, so my wife has caused a kind, loyal, and loving son to have to leave his home, his family, his father, and live in the forest for 14 years? Are you kidding me? Like, really? Also, she's practically the reason I died in the first place. Like, did we forget about that? So I would definitely have to say that towards the end of my life at least, there was no positive impact from her, like whatsoever. But yeah, I would negatively impacted. Yeah.
I feel like some parallels to today that are important to note is from the parenting dynamics that we can take is like the Indian parenting culture, there's also balancing respect between the two parenting figures in today's American society. So, a moral takeaway can be that even though we go through these hardships, and sometimes even with our parents, which are difficult at the time, these situations build strength and endurance and lead to self growth in the end. And I think that's important to remember and to apply to modern America today.
And now, time for another break.
Ladies, this one's for you. Have you ever been told that you can't do something just because you're a woman? How many times in your life have you been put down only because of your womanhood? Newsflash, it's the 21st century, and this is a problem of the past thanks to your new one-way ticket out, feminism. Feminism is your new tool to get those gross boys off your back. They want to make more money than you? Feminism. They want to try to make sports all about the big tough men? Feminism. Patriarchal societies are a thing of the past thanks to our 2-in-1 misogynistic killing formula proved to take out the big man. Feminism. Order now.
Side effects may include nausea, coughing, sneezing, scratchy throat, or even death. Please contact your doctor to see if feminism is right for you. Batteries not included.
Alrighty. So today, so far, we talked about has been Rama and his relationship with his family, as well as his relationship with his wife. And let me tell you, for everybody who is not sitting in this room right now, the tensions may be a little bit high, but that's alright. Because we are going to switch up the directions of this discussion a little bit, and we are going to focus our attention on the infamous Ravana. Alrighty, so Ravana, what do you have to say to Rama about your treatment? Do you actually believe yourself to be a villain? Let's hear it.
First off, before I really get going in about anything, I just want to formally thank you for having me on the show today. I'm a big fan of your work. Anyway, the world perceives me as a villain. We get that. But this is only because of the archetype of the antagonist normally being evil. But it's just not the case here. My life has been full of research, scholarship, and devotion to Lord Shiva. I'm a faithful king of virtue, and to this day, many temples worship me for goodwill. Sri Lanka is all about Ravanization and the forthcoming of how I'm actually a character of good and not of evil. The expectation of me being a villain is very contradictory to the actions that I've put forth.
I just want to testify to Robin's character real quick. I mean, he is the guy that kidnapped me, so I don't particularly like the guy, but I think when he kidnapped me, that wasn't a great reflection on his character, obviously, but I also think it's not fair to judge him on one situation that he's done and decide that he's completely evil from that. Because when I was in the presence of him, it was apparent that he had some type of empathy. I mean, if anyone watches the one great film that I star in called Sita Sings the Blue, it portrays that Ravana did kidnap me against my will, but afterwards he didn't really force me to do anything I didn't want to do. For example, for some reason I didn't want to go inside, and I was being really stubborn about that, and he just let me sit outside instead of forcing his ways on me or dragging me inside. And you do see him get a little frustrated by this, especially in the end, but he never really drug me inside, he didn't force his ways, and it appeared that because of that he had some type of empathy. So, yes, he's made some poor choices, and yes, maybe he's not the best guy, but I don't think that he should be completely judged off of one bad decision that he's made in his life, and I don't think that makes him the essence of an evil being.
Considering everything that had happened, he still went out of his way to send a golden deer just to get me separated from you, Sita.
To call me the villain that you're trying to call me, just ask my followers. To this day, my followers chant, and this is just an amazing thing that some of my followers came up with. They say, the great God with 10 heads, the great God with 20 arms, the great God with 10 powers. May God Ravana arrive. Now, let that sink in for a second there. If I was as evil as you say I am, why would my followers be saying that? If I was as evil as you say I am, why would so many believe in the healing properties I have, the scholarly deeds I have done and dedicated my life to, the way that I devote my life to Shiva? Why? Sri Lanka idolizes me, just as your followers do for your actions, but they idolize me for mine. Why would a villain be idolized as such?
Alrighty. So first off, I want to say thank you for your input, everybody. Your discussion so far has been really great. But now, Ravana, here's the big question that I have for you that all of our viewers want to know. Why? Why did you kidnap Sita? Why did you do everything that you did? I want to know your justification and your backing for why you thought that doing what you did was okay.
The reasons and the justifications for my actions can honestly be debated. There's many different forms of the Ramayana. There's a Buddhist Ramayana that doesn't even talk about me ever kidnapping Sita. And that is, it can be tossed up in debate, but at the end of the day, I did what I did for my family and for my people. There's a big thing that we talk about Rama and his family and the whole concept of Dharma and understanding that there is a moral compass that we must find within ourselves and that we must live by. If Rama's family is allowed to live by this concept and ideal of Dharma, I believe that as a person living on this world, that I am allowed to live by such. If you and your brother are allowed to cut off the nose of my dear beloved sister Sorpanaka, I am allowed to do what is just because at the end of the day, I'm fighting for our family and our family name. And I just feel like my family means the world to me, and to defend them the way I did was only right. I pray to Shiva every day that my family may be protected. Lord Shiva has great wisdom. I am a learned scholar and a devotee to him. I understand what he wants for me and what he wants for my life. I understand that Lord Vishnu has a plan, that I may die by him, by Rama, to attain moksha, which is the ending of my reincarnation cycle, so I may live a divine life. All that I am and all that I live for is dedicated to my devotion to Shiva, the god of our religion, the religion that we share.
I feel this conversation about Ravana and his character can teach us a lot about how we perceive people and how we judge their character. So I think the first thing that's important to note is there's always more than meets the eye, and we can't always judge people by one situation that we've seen them do, whether that is good or bad. And don't judge a book by its 10 heads for Ravana. And I think he's just a misunderstood character that is just often he's just not closely examined, and people don't look past the action. They don't look for the reasons of why he did what he did. And I think if you do that, it can give more understanding to what he did, and it might not justify it or make it a better action, but we can understand more of why someone did something, and I think that's important to take into today. And while character redemption is socially acceptable and somewhat expected even in American culture, it is definitely not necessarily acceptable in Indian culture from what we're seeing in the Ramayana with Ravana. He's pretty much always in the Ramayana being characterized as evil. We don't see any character redemption for him, and I feel like in a lot of modern American stories, whenever there is a villain or a bad character, we see a lot of character growth or character redemption, and we just don't see that with this story from the Indian culture in Hinduism.
Well, it is that time again. Time for another short break, and we will be back for the conclusion. Thank you.
To all of the wives, daughters, and sisters out there, has your loyalty and purity been questioned by a family member or your husband recently? Are you tired of the hassle involved with performing an entire ritual every time your purity is challenged? Well, we in the heavens above have a God-sent solution for you. Introducing the Agni at Home Purity Test. This product allows you to take the purity test at home without all the excessiveness of a full ritual. You simply place the product in your hand and light it on fire. If it burns you, then you are not pure. But if you can hold it in your hand without being burnt, then you've passed the test. You can get yours today for only 10 rupees. This may sustain severe burns, heartbreak, pain, and disappointment from loved ones. Fire and matches not included. Each test sold separately. Please use product with caution. Alrighty, well, that wraps up our episode for today. I would like to personally thank all of you for joining us today. It was great to have all of you. So, wow, Jeff, that was certainly a lot to take in.
I am still trying to take it all in, and yeah, I definitely gotta agree with you there.
So, let's just kind of recap for our audience who may have skipped through a couple of sections. Who knows? So, in today's episode, we learned that Rama and Sita are absolutely not couple goals whatsoever. And to make it all even better, they both blame each other for their failing relationship. How great is that?
Well, I mean, who could blame them? From their feelings, we learned that you need proper communication, who would have thought, about feelings, and that those insecurities can cause major issues if left to brew inside one mind.
Very true, very true. We also saw the cultural and periodical differences in relationship dynamics between India and modern America. So, we also saw how partners are treated differently in relationships based on their cultural and or theological backgrounds.
Yes, yes. And it's also very interesting to learn about the different parental dynamics between children and their parents, as well as between spouses. I thought that was a very interesting part of our episode today.
Honestly, Jeff, I really couldn't agree more with you. It was so interesting to see how Indian culture is similar to modern American culture in the fact that there's a balance of respect among parental figures?
Yeah, let's just put it this way. The two cultures, different in many aspects, do share many similarities. How about that section about Ravana? What surprised you there?
So, Jeff, that was definitely a good subject to bring up. I'm really glad that we got him on this show because I know so many people were wondering his thought process. I think that Ravana is the number one misunderstood character in this entire episode. And, like, in the entire Ramayana, he misunderstood completely. He seems like somebody that you'd want to grab a drink with in the forest, if you know what I'm saying.
I completely understand what you're saying. I think it is interesting because the Indian culture, he has done what he did and is evil for it. I mean, come on. If we were in modern American culture, then he would have a whole backstory and the audience would have fallen in love with him. What do you think the main takeaway from this entire episode was?
So I do like that point that you brought up with the audience falling in love with him if it were modern culture because I just know that growing up seeing all of the villain backstories come up, it's just very interesting to see the cultural difference. But what I think is the most important takeaway from this episode would to be able to understand the fact that moralistically as well as culturally, modern America and India have their differences, but they are also similar in many ways.
Very well put. Couldn't have said it better myself. There's definitely a lot we can learn by comparing the two cultures.
There definitely is, Jeff. So, all right. Once again, I would like to thank everybody for being here and for participating in our discussion. We're going to wrap up things today, but how about a round of applause for these folks? Thank you all so much for tuning in again to the Fresh Prince of Ayodha, and we'll see you never.
Probably forgot to say this at the beginning, but The Fresh Prince of Ayodha was recorded in front of a live studio audience.
DJ, turn me up.